Thank you very much, Payal, and thank you all for turning up on an evening such as this, particularly the IPL finals. I know I am begrudging of the fact that I had to miss them, so I can't even imagine. I better make it worth your while. The pressure is on. Okay, so like Payal already said, we are going to be talking about elections and electoral democracy, and what better day than a day when a lot of you might have voted. To go back in time, when Jawaharlal Nehru first sort of articulated the idea of an independent India being a democracy with universal adult franchise, it wasn't quite met with a lot of enthusiasm. Even the so-called champions of democracy across the world felt that India was too poor, too illiterate to succeed as a democracy. Now, several decades down the line, we might be very far from being a perfect democracy, but universal adult franchise has been enthusiastically embraced in this country. In fact, I would go as far as to say that by and large, the average citizen of this country has sustained this democracy by valuing her vote. Even the most disenfranchised go to lengths to cast their vote and take pride in it. And the bedrock of this faith is the Election Commission that is tasked with conducting free and fair elections in this massive country with a massive population and any number of challenges. Our first guest for this evening has been a vital part of the Election Commission as an election commissioner, as well as conducted the 2009 general elections to great acclaim as the Chief Election Commissioner of India. He has recently written a very, very valuable book, at least to my mind, I would highly recommend it, about Indian election. And he's here with us today to share his ringside point of view. Please welcome Mr. Navin Chawla. Thank you for joining us, sir, and welcome. And of course, congratulations on a marvelous and really, really important book. Before we sort of dig in to the meat of this conversation, I'd like to ask you something that's always baffled me, and I'm sure a lot of our audience members might be interested in. How does the Election Commission really pull this off? I mean, give us a sense of the kind of logistics involved in conducting elections in India, particularly the general elections.
Well, you know, the figures are just staggering. When people come in from other countries, other commissioners, they can't get over the figures, but nor can we. When I did the 2009 election, there were 714 million registered voters. In 2014, this is also the way our population was going up, there were 816, and now there are almost 900 million voters. Not all are going to vote, 60%, 65%, but it's more than the whole of Europe and Russia put together, more than the whole of North and South America put together. I mean, the whole of everything put together, because as you know, China doesn't vote. 900,000 polling stations, 4 million people seconded on duty, 8 million police personnel, paramilitary forces on duty. So 12 million people, more than the population of so many countries, are on duty during these weeks. We have 3,000 senior officers who go out as observers for a month in each constituency to see that a level playing field can be established. So these are the figures that we try and grapple with. And I know that there are many criticisms and they're going to come in questions, but just to say in the beginning, 900 million people, 600 million, 650 million voting. We hold our elections on time. We hold them each time on time. If you look around our neighborhood, Pragya, you know, I don't want to name any country, all the countries that got independence from colonial rule at about the same time that we did, look at them, look where we've reached. So maybe they are in various forms of democracy. There are many countries that are called themselves democracies but slide into dictatorships because they hold elections according to, on gunpoint every few years. But these are still the most remarkable achievements of India.
Fabulous. I'm so glad that you highlighted the positives because the rest of the conversation may not quite go that way as you predicted. So, it's fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to put it, that your book comes out at a time when a lot of aspersions are being cast on the way in which the Election Commission has been conducting these elections. Now, it is not for me to judge, and in fact, it might not even be right for you to judge. But there have been any number of instances. I'm sure people are already aware of what I'm referring to. But we've had the Election Commission try and stop Raj Thackeray from giving speeches, try and stop, a book on Rafale deal from coming out, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are endless instances, and I don't want to take up time naming them. What I want to really ask you is what you make of these allegations, because the impression that one gets from the outside is that either the model code of conduct is entirely toothless, or it's just very hard to implement it. As someone who's been on the driver's seat before, what do you make of it?
Well, the model code of conduct was given its set of teeth by T.N. Seshan. Before that, we had very fine civil servants, but they were in the nature of early civil servants who never took a public position. People don't remember them. So T.N. Seshan had this famous spat with the Prime Minister of the day, Mr. Narasimha Rao, all because he asked for two very small things which were, it's a little background, which were refused. He wanted some central forces, and he wanted one or two IAS officers as observers. And he wanted them under his command because he felt that while they were seconded to him, they had to listen to the rules of the Election Commission. These were denied. Mr. Seshan took the next step and said, I'm not conducting any further elections. Under Article 324 of the Constitution, I have all the powers, and it is true. Under Article 324 of the Constitution, our founding fathers, the Constituent Assembly, gave such enormous power to the Election Commission. And I realized that power because I also had Mr. Seshan as my informal guru, whom I would go and see in Chennai. Having said that, he took on Mr. Narasimha Rao and said, if you think that I'm going to resign, think again. If you think I'm going to die, I'm not obliging you. And if you think you can remove me, you can't, because you can't remove me, you don't have the numbers in Parliament, you can't impeach me. So they had this face-off, and as a result, you can't take on prime ministers too easily, even for a chief election commissioner. So 2 election commissioners were saddled on both sides. And one of them is a great friend of Tarun sitting here, and mine. Now, he interpreted the model code of conduct in the strictest possible way. And we in India have got used to expecting that standard. So when there's a slip from that standard, it stands out very critically for us. Now, I'm not going to answer Pragya's googly very directly because I want to say right in the beginning, she's going to try, but I'm going to say that I never commented on the 2004 election or the commission. I never commented on the 2014. Nobody commented on me in 2009. And what I see going on here at the moment, I may be sharing some of your views and I may not, But I feel that as a former Chief Election Commissioner, I must make this clear. I don't want to comment on my, just as the Chief Justice of India doesn't comment on his successors, we hold our private views. So I will answer around it, and I'm sure you'll come to your conclusions. Please don't make me say the direct yes or no.
You do your job, I'll do mine. Okay, so moving on, drilling down rather a little deeper. When we talked about the model code of conduct, one of the things that one has seen in this election is perhaps an unprecedented sort of use of hate speech, divisive speech, communal speech, call it what you may. Is that a sense that you get as well? And do you think the EC is doing enough?
Well, the three things that worry me the most are all three C's. Not C for Chawla, but C for cash, C for caste, C for communalism. These are prohibited in the Representation of People's Act. They are in conflict with the Indian Penal Code, and we see them happening almost every day. I take cash first. 3,000 crores have already been seized, and seized by officials of the Election Commission all over the country. The total amount seized in the 2014 election was about 400 crores, which is bad enough. But 3,200 crores of cash, of freebies, of drugs, of illicit liquor. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg. Is it 10%? If so, is this going to be a 30,000 crore election? Is it going to be a 50,000 crore election? These analyses will be made. But is this a level playing field? Of course it's not a level playing field. It's terrible. Why do we have a statutory limit that if you stand, you have a limit of 70 lakhs and I can be spending 70 crores because I'm moneyed? And why is it that every single political party wants to give its tickets to the crorepathi's? Why? And does it help that 16% of the people already being given tickets to are those who have serious criminal antecedents? I'm not talking about a bounced check. I'm talking about murder, attempt to murder, rape, dacoity. Rape after Nirbhay is given in a self-affidavit because the Supreme Court has insisted in 2002 that every candidate has to give their statements of their wealth, their criminal antecedents, and also their educational qualifications. So these are all there in self-sworn affidavits. And the astonishing thing, I'm not speaking here for this audience, but I'm speaking about people in so many parts of the country that if you are a criminal and you are in jail, you can still win an election. You can have the kind of charges that we are seeing, the most astonishing charge. And such a person, such a woman is already put up as a candidate. So many things are going wrong. And I think we need, this is not something that we just debate till the elections and after the 23rd, the results come out and so on. I was telling Avi, for example, that why is it that a criminal, a candidate who's in jail and who may be on bail can vote, but an under trial doesn't have a voice? So I said we should go to the Supreme Court and do something. So in that way, for all the other people, who are constitutionally interested, we must take this dialogue and not forget it, because the next election, whenever it's held, will be more than a 40,000 crore election. By that time, according to one astonishing study by a very well-known person in Yale called Milan Vaishnav, he actually calculates that if a person has a criminal background, serious criminal, your chances go up by 23%. or winning. So our criminal justice system has also broken down. We need to look beyond the election commission, beyond the level playing field. Why do we have these statutory limits which we can't maintain? Why are we spending 40 and 50 crores? Don't we need to rethink this algebra? This algebra? This is what we ought to be doing through the year, Tarun, not just on the topical thing of the day and the election is over on the 23rd, so we move on. No, we mustn't move on.
You know, you touched upon two things that I'm going to bring up later on in the conversation because I don't want to yet be done, neither with cash nor with criminality. But to bring the focus back on communalism for a second, you know, whether, I don't want to get into whether it's more this year or, I mean, this election or not, or, you know, so on and so forth, but there have been some very, very problematic statements that have been made. And one of the things is, of course, that the Election Commission is being criticized for is the clean chits that the Prime Minister is being given. Now, as somebody who served in, and it's very easily comparable that other people, even from the BJP, are not getting away with the kind of statements that the Prime Minister has gotten away with. Now, as a Chief Election Commissioner, is the Prime Minister above board in a way where, you know, he is not just first amongst equals, but also, you know, to be dealt with kid gloves relative to everybody else who is contesting elections? Is that the norm?
I'll give you an example from my own time. I'll give you 4 examples. I learned that the Prime Minister, then Dr. Manmohan Singh, wanted to hold a meeting, political meeting, in his official residence. So I sent word that he can't. You can go to a hotel, you can go to a party office, but not at the official residence. Secondly, you cannot take with you anybody who is born on the exchequer of the central government. In other words, you can't take your principal secretary to the Prime Minister with you. Take your political functionaries, yes. He abided. He didn't hold a single meeting there. All the meetings were held in hotels or Ashok or somewhere. I had trouble with 3 Congress chief ministers and 1 Congress ally, the DMK. One wanted to go to Calcutta to raise funds from tea planters, and he wanted to go in the state plane, and he wanted his staff to go with him and stay in the state guest house and use the state car. I said, none of this. You can go commercial, your party can hire a plane for you, all that. You can't take any staff with you. So we had a terrible face-off, and he complained bitterly about the model code of conduct. And then he threatened me with the Supreme Court. You can go to the Supreme Court, you can go to the Supreme Court. I don't need to go to the Supreme Court, you go, you go. He didn't, as it happened. There was another chief minister whom I know quite well, and we had an observer, and they filed a false case on the observer that he had given orders for police firing where somebody died, and he wasn't even on the spot. He wasn't taking it back. I said, I'm writing to the president and threatening president rule on you, which I did to 2 other chief ministers. So when you're tough, and everybody knows you mean business, everybody falls in line. The entire political establishment falls in line, Prime Minister, ministers, everybody. Now the other thing I've already told you is Article 324, which you can Google. Just has 3 words, but those words gave, the interpretation of those words for India was that there is all the power with the Chief Election Commissioner and the commissioners, and it is up to him or her to use it. And the one thing I did mention to the election commissioners at some point informally was that we are a very thinking country. We're not just in this hall where we're all graduates and postgraduates and so on. Whether we are in an adda in Calcutta, we are in a dhaba, we are anywhere, we have opinions. Indians have opinions on everything all the time. Go outside and ask anybody their opinion. They may not tell you whom they voted for, but they have an opinion. So India will judge a constitutional functionary very critically, and it won't forget. So the only mantras that I could advise would be integrity, transparency, and knowing that every action will be remembered. People remember that the Kashmir election in 1998 was a hoax. People remember that the elections before that in Kashmir were all fiddled. Nobody in Kashmir ever forgets it. People of a certain generation. So here too, if any constitutional authority, whether it be in a court or whether it be in a commission, blots their copybook and deviates from these simple principles, the country neither forgets nor easily forgives.
I'm really not saying this to try and corner you. This is a genuine question that I am seeking to understand. I know it's not your place and you might not want to comment on this, but say if the Prime Minister of a particular country was to say that my principal opposition contender is standing from elections from a particular place only because it has large numbers of Muslim voters, and there was a complaint about this, would it, coming from the Prime Minister, strike you as violating the code? And if you will not comment on that, do you think it's regular that the EC should take 30 odd days to come up with a reply, even if it's a clean chit?
And the latter part first. No 30 days. It has to be decided by the end of the day. That is what the model code is all about. You've got to get your feedback, get your legal opinion, and give the country an answer there and then. By the end of the day, max, if you have to give notice, a complaint against you, so I have to give notice to you, ask you to give you a reply in 24 hours, but must act on it quickly. Regarding the vitriol, I think each election in India sees terrible vitriol. And nothing worse than in the United States. I mean, look at the kind of words used for President Obama. Look what was used for his wife. I mean, according to our model code, I mean, their election should have actually been countermanded. But in America, you can say anything, and they do in many other countries. But I do want to say this, that there is a point where, now there's been vitriol on all sides. It has not only come from the Prime Minister, it has come from practically everybody in the heat of the campaign. They have said something which perhaps in their more sober minds, they wouldn't. But once again, when somebody goes over the top, again, there's a certain disgust that comes into the country and the voter. And that is, I do remember in my time, one of the people was speaking about the minorities. And he said the most terrible things. So we not only issued notice to him, we also issued notice to the political party concerned. And we even went so far that perhaps we went too far and said that this person shouldn't even be your candidate because he has infringed every rule of communalism in our country. But the entire press jumped on the Election Commission and said, your job is not to tell the political party whom to have as a candidate or not. Let that be discussed at the husting. And because he was so roundly criticized by the press for the words he said, that party made sure that they did give him the ticket. But he had a difficult time. And so even here, when very communal statements have been made, and they've been made on all sides, it'll be very interesting for us to watch whether, I mean, somebody has accused one of our heroes as being a terrorist and prayed for his death. I would be very interested to see how the country reacts to that.
Talking about the same person who has, talked about praying for one of our heroes' death, cursing rather that hero to death. Would you, one of the other statements that she made was that she was on top of the Babri Masjid demolishing it, and she's proud of the fact that she did that. That, in fact, is a confession of crime. Could the EC do more than just ban her for 1 day or 2 days or whatever, 3 days that they did? Is that power there, theoretically?
Unfortunately, the EC has been asking for many reforms from the government for 25 years. But it's always a case of apply, no reply. Now, we've been asking, when I say we, I mean the Election Commission. But there's a sort of virus that goes into you even when you're not an election commissioner any longer, and you keep saying we. But anyway, one of the things was that there is no graded punishment. There is this, that you can stop somebody from campaigning for a couple of days. But it's like the elephant, the proverbial elephant, the hammer. So you can withdraw the symbol of a party. But for that, that's a it has to be very serious before you do something like that. But up till now, an admonishment, a reprimand has worked very well when Election Commission does it, because name and shame has worked very well so far in our country.
I'm not so sure it's working this time, but we'll leave this be for now, because I really want to talk to you about the cash component that you were talking about. So you obviously mentioned that, the system is rotten. People are really not spending 70 lakhs. And obviously the one candidate or two candidates that are adhering to that limit are at a severe disadvantage, and therefore the playing field is definitely not leveled. And I understand that no political party is interested. But just in terms of ideas, what might be some of the reforms? Because the Election Commission can only do so much. I mean, even if they're seizing 3,000 crores, that, like you said, is the tip of the iceberg. What are some of the reforms that you think will really go a long way to stem this rot?
Transparency in funding. No political party, no prime minister in the last 25 years wants transparency of funding. What has the Election Commission been saying? Okay, if you're a candidate and you're supposed to be spending only that much, then all the monies that any of us contribute should be on a website. £50 in the US, $50 in England, $50 in the US, comes onto a website. Here, there's a most convenient loophole. If you decide to donate 20,000 to me as a candidate, that comes onto the election website. But if it's 19,999, we are below the radar. So everybody's giving 19,000 in multiples, so it's all below the radar. So if a calculation is made of how the monies are coming in, one is that electoral bonds, of course, as soon as the Supreme Court said that they have to finally be revealed at the end of the election, nobody's giving any more money on electoral bonds. Nobody wants to be identified. Everybody wants to give black money. All political parties want to collect black money. Can you imagine that? So we've been saying in the Election Commission, let's have transparency. Where are the political parties getting their money from? Explain. Put sunlight onto it. Tell us where it's coming from. If it's coming from this house, let them explain that it's this house. Once upon a time after independence, these were bucket collections. People gave 1 rupee and 2 rupees. Who's giving 1 and 2 rupees now? It's all a deal. The deals are made 5 years before. That money comes in from somewhere. Where do you account for how do you even account for 3,000 crores? How do you account for it? So none of the political parties want to share where the money is coming from. It requires legislation. So the Election Commission keeps writing to the And if you go onto the website and see the 27 odd reforms, the few reforms that have come because of the Supreme Court. They've come because of people, lawyers and others who have reached the Supreme Court. The Association of Democratic Reforms. These are the people who brought about some amount of reform. But the political party, no reform, no matter which political party it is. And that's the shame. Now, there's one political party in opposition at the center, and there are political parties in opposition in the states, and they're not all the same. And everybody blames the government in power, but when they are in power, nobody wants to bring about the change. So this is what is so wrong with our body politic. It's all right that you expect the election commission that you've got to be transparent, you've got to be fair, you've got to issue the notices, you've got to level the playing field. But the election commission is not collecting the money. The election commission is busy giving recommendations to the government which go into the shredder. And we are all mute witnesses to this. And we'll forget about it after the election. And then the next election will be 100,000 crores, 80,000 crores, and nothing will change. That is the tragedy of our democracy, that 300 million people have no drinking water. 700 or 800 have no form of social security. But the member of parliament who goes into parliament enters a cozy club. Nobody criticizes one another when you're there. Nobody. And if you've spent 70 crores or 50 or 30 or 10 or 15, your first endeavor is to recoup that money. And you're all busy recouping. So we have a case of a well-known person who's now considered a fugitive, was a member of parliament, ran a lovely airline. We all love to travel on it. We love the uniforms and everything. And then when he became a member of the Rajya Sabha, having spent a liberal amount of money, I think, he was in line for the Parliamentary Committee on Civil Aviation. But wouldn't have struck you as a conflict of interest? No, it didn't, because 22 MPs went to the House and said, this is not conflict of interest, this is domain expertise. So now, you know, when you're in that, we are now all parliamentarians, we've all come from different parties, we fought each other at the hustings, but here we're all going to have Glenlivet together. In Central Hall, we're going to have coffee together, and we're all pals, and nobody will criticize another, and nobody will ask for change. Forget a political party. Has one single independent in any of the parliaments that you can think of said, let's have electoral reforms. Let's dig out those 27 proposals that the Election Commission we've been writing and writing and writing. Let's dig them out and discuss them. No.
You know, before I move on, these figures are just blowing my mind. I mean, it's difficult for me to come around to the fact that we're just sitting here throwing these numbers, 3,000 crores, 100,000 crores. And you were telling me right now that after, the Supreme Court judgment on electoral bonds, people are, because they have to reveal it in the end, the total amount, people are more reluctant to buy electoral bonds. But I mean, there's been a recent RTI that has revealed by an activist called Vihar Dubey that has revealed that just in March and April, 3,622 crores worth of secretive electoral bonds were issued. I mean, these numbers are just baffling. And I know this is, you may not be able to sort of comment officially or with any degree of proof, but where do you think this money is really coming from? I mean, we're not that rich a country.
Yeah, I am going to leave it to your imagination. Let me just spell out some mathematics for you. An election commission is funded to the extent in about 4,000 crores. It was about less than 2,000 in my time. It became about 4,000 in 2014. Maybe it's about 5,000. There are more polling stations, there are more machines, there's more machinery. So everything has to be paid for, and that's totted up to say 5,000 crores. And then we have a limit of 70 lakhs for 543 candidates. Now my mathematics is so poor. But if you multiply 543 into 70 lakhs, then we're not reaching 50,000 crores, no? We're not. Okay. So where's the rest coming from? Once I was at Lucknow airport, I'd gone for election duty. And all I could see were helicopters. So that fellow said, "Ye to taxi stand ban gaya hai." You know, there are 30, 40 helicopters. Now, if we hire a helicopter for a day, how much are we paying? 5 lakhs per hour, 3 lakhs per hour. I mean, we can just tot up the figures on transportation, on television, on ads in the newspapers, on the planes that are hired for weeks on end, helicopters for weeks on end. So somebody is footing that bill, and where's that coming from? It's not free like the Max Auditorium. It is. No, it's coming from somewhere. So now I leave it to your imagination to say that where is this money coming from? It's all black money. It's being shown somewhat as white. And why is it that when the Election Commission says to all the political parties, account for your money, tell us where it's coming from, give sunlight onto that, show the figures of how much a helicopter is costing per day for your use. Everybody employs the best chartered accountants in the country. And if there's a hiccup, then we have the best lawyers in the country. So amongst us, we are the best chartered accountants and we are the best lawyers, and nothing ever sees a logical conclusion. But we know that if we've already seized 3,200, 300 crores, and I'm saying it's the tip of the iceberg, because now what political parties are doing, which you don't know, is that if they've decided that you're the candidate, they are moving the money across to you even before the model code is announced. It's already moved. And the most astonishing practices, should I tell you one? In Tamil Nadu is just something else, you know, as far as the states are concerned. Sorry if there are any of you from there. So, these goons go at night. Now, how can the election observer who's there for a month be everywhere at all the time? And he's not, or she's not getting tip-offs. And some who did got tip-offs are wonderful women. I'll tell you about them. But now if you go at 2 in the morning and there is in the little place, there is a little picture of a deity, and you carry a bottle of milk with you and you carry a little can and you make that person put the hand in the milk and say, I'm giving you so much now, and you swear on the deity that you're going to vote for me. Now we Indians are just so ingenious. And we transport money in the most incredible ways. So how are we to know that in the 2014 election, cars, they're no longer looking in the dicky, it's all hidden in the engine or in the sides. All these sort of things, I mean. We've got to bring transparency.
But you mentioned black money. Haven't we gotten rid of all the black money in demonetization?
Very good question.
Okay, I'll move on.
I read Raghuram, who said that 99% had all come in, and that was when he was the governor of the Reserve Bank.
Okay, so very quickly I want to touch upon criminality. One line. I looked this up and I did not find anybody, any country, with a certain level of democracy that's ever nominated a terror accused as a candidate before. I'll be happy if somebody knows of another country or another instance where this has happened. And I think this makes it imminent that we debate this seriously. We've been talking about criminal candidature for a while. What is the least amount of reform that we can bring in? Just very quickly, because I want to move on to EVMs and we run out of time.
Just in a sentence to say, again, Election Commission has been writing to say that if charges are framed in a court of law and those are for heinous offenses, that person should not get a ticket. It's a reasonable restriction. When that goes into Parliament, we are defeated there because all parliamentarians say, no. The thing is that when we come into power, we foist false cases on our opponents. We'll have day-to-day hearing. We'll have all this and all that. Nothing. So what Election Commission has been asking for 22 years, criminal cases, no candidature, no.
Okay. The big elephant in the room, EVMs. We're almost out of time, but you have said, sorry?
I heard this bang, bang, bang. Na? So
No, we have 5 more minutes.
We
Yeah,
have 5
EVM.
minutes,
Okay, so EVMs, you have reassured us over and over again that EVMs cannot be hacked, and this comes from what I believe is not just, you have not just experienced it, but also kind of demonstrated how they cannot be hacked by holding a hackathon. Where are the glitches coming from? Because there are any number of complaints, at least some of them have been validated. There's recently been an RTI confirmed by a collector in Maharashtra saying that in Buldhara, EVMs, all the votes were going to the BJP. Your colleague, former CEC, Mr. Gopalaswamy, has said that machines can in fact be attached to EVMs to extract information during voting and so on and so forth. Is this something we really don't need to worry about?
On the EVM, no worry. But now I want to ask a question because many of you may have voted. Maybe the Noida people didn't vote today because they voted earlier. But the Delhi people, if they're here, voted. May I just ask that those who voted, did the VVPAT correspond correctly to the button that you press? Please raise your hands for me. Okay. Is there a single case where it didn't? I'd like to know. Well, now that's very reassuring. Because later? Yeah. I see. And then it gave you the answer for the button that you'd pressed correctly? We've come a long way, and I'll be very brief. 2009, I do the election, and then L.K. Advani and so on for the BJP come and say, no, the EVMs could be hacked. So I collected 100 machines and put them all over the election commission floor, 10 from different states, and said, I put cameras. This is now an average polling station in the country. Please hack. So then nobody could hack, so they said, let's take it away. I said, I can't take it home. How can I let you take it home? You'll take it to Khan Market and make my little EVM into a refrigerator. No, you can't. You're all Khan Market walas, no? No, Noida chaps also. Anyway, so I said, you can't take it away. Now you do what you can here. Nobody could do anything. So they said, give us a printer, give us a paper trail. So I said, this is not Marks and Spencer's, you know. We can't go and buy the VVPAT off a shelf. I mean, what is this? This is jugaad. So we need time. So that is what has finally developed. And I'm very happy to see from all of you that none of you experienced that glitch. And I'd been telling the Election Commission after the last assembly elections that the machine is fine, EVM is fine, cannot be hacked. Your pocket computer cannot be hacked. But with that, if our people are not trained properly on the printer, there'll be a glitch. But I'm happy to see that that has more or less been smoothened out.
Okay, final question, which is not really a question. Yeah, of course, because your book is called Every Vote Counts, and I want to encourage those of you who haven't, whose votes are still coming up to vote. You have an actual literal story about why every vote counts, about, I think, Mr. Joshi. I'd like you to tell that story. Or was it Mr. Joshi? No, the one whose wife went to the temple.
Yeah.
So sometimes it literally does. I'll
give you two stories, very quickly, because that ghanti is going to ring again. And where's Gurcharan? I'm sure he's getting impatient. Hold on, two quick stories. One is we have a pujari, you know where the Gir lions and all are. So the whole village was relocated. But this guy said, "Main to pujari hu Shiv temple ka, I'm not going anywhere." So for him, 5-6 people have to go twice in 5 years. General election ke liye bhi, assembly election ke liye bhi. And we set it up a day before, 5-6 people are there, and he saunters in when he wants, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And we cannot close the booth until the chap hasn't finished pressing his button. Then he complains कि यहाँ तो कोई MLA आता ही नहीं है मेरे vote canvas के लिए. I mean, you know, we have all sorts in our country. And as far as single voting count, in 2008, I think there was the Rajasthan Assembly election. And in that, there were two, you know how the Congress party is, everybody's cutting each other and all, but there's no press here, no? Everyone, all rivals. So there was the two rivals, you know. And the chap who was due to become chief minister was C.P. Joshi because he was the president of the party. He lost by 1 vote. And his wife to this day, rues the fact that she didn't cast her vote that day, because had she cast her vote, he would have won. And because he one vote or two votes, loss is loss. And Gaylord pipped him to the post. So, so
Thank
that's
you
it.
for that.
And you all voted, na? Every vote counts. Anyone who didn't vote, I mean, just tell me privately after this over a drink.
He's totally not going to take you to task. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you so much, Mr. Chawla, for talking to us.